Welcome back to EduPod, where education meets everything else. I'm Barun from EduPassport, and today I'm here with Sean Carter, someone who's math genius by day and fitness coach by night. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Really glad to be here.
Awesome. So let's get started. Question number one, okay? Master of math by day and fitness guru by night. What do these two worlds have in common for you?
I would say, obviously there's a lot of similarities between being like a coach and a teacher. I'm the quote unquote expert. But I think over the last few years, the big similarity between the two is what value am I adding to a classroom, or what value am I adding to a coaching session? In this day and age where everything's online, a lot of students have tutors, there's AI, there's math apps. The information is there, right? So when I come into a classroom, or when a student comes into my classroom, what value am I adding as a teacher or as a coach? Because this information, it's not like kind of in the old days where the teacher knew everything and nobody else knew anything, right? The information, everybody has the information now. Right. So what are we bringing to that a student or a client's not going to get on their own or elsewhere?
Okay, yeah. So to be specific, for you personally, looking back at your time in the classroom, what would you say is the value that you bring into the classroom?
I think I add a lot of levity. Okay. I bring a lot of humor into the classroom, and into my coaching. Students will. There's a saying, like, I might not always remember what you taught me, but I always remember how I felt.
Yes.
Right? So I will have students tell me, like, I never really liked math, but I didn't hate coming to your class. Like, I looked forward coming to class because I knew even though math wasn't my favorite, I still had a good time.
Right.
And I think that's the kind of thing that I can bring that you're not going to find maybe with AI.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't mention this, but Sean actually was coaching me for a while as well. So I absolutely do remember. You bring that to the classes. Yes.
And good playlists.
Yes, exactly. He has the best playlist, for real. So you teach abstract concepts in the classroom and physical concepts in the gym.
Yeah.
How do you adapt your teaching style to match each environment?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, there's a lot of similarities in sort of a classic teaching style where I'll model and then you do, right? And that holds true a lot in the classroom and certainly in the gym. What I have to adapt in the classroom a bit more, there's a bit more of a selling aspect as to, like, why do I need to do this? When my clients come into the gym, they know why they're there.
That's true.
Right? They're there they're there to get physically fit. They're there for a social aspect.
Right.
They're generally older. So they know why they're there.
Right.
With students, and especially students, if it's a class that's not an elective, you have to be there.
Yeah.
They want an answer that's maybe a bit more like, why do I have to do this, right? So the sort of the selling of myself and the material is that's more what I have to adapt.
Yeah. So do you find that to be difficult, or simply a challenge that you've adapted to so far?
There are times where I find it very difficult, but I think I lean more towards the latter. I think I've gotten pretty good. Like, I think a lot of teachers, when you're teaching courses like mathematics, there's a bit of showmanship that if you want to have a good year, there's a bit of, like, you need to win them over with your personality, right?
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Okay, so how do you build trust quickly, whether it's with a student who's struggling at math or someone who's nervous about stepping it up in the gym?
So it's a little bit with the gym, it's I find it with the gym, it's a little bit easier because I think as a coach, a lot of people can sort of relate to me. You know, I don't, especially first-time gym goers. You know, I don't come from like a athletic background. I didn't do sports when I was a kid. I sort of came into it later. So when a client comes into the gym and they're nervous, I know what that's like. I remember, you know, you know, sometimes I still feel that way. So I can, you know, so I can relate on that level of like what it feels like not knowing what you're doing, right? And I think that being able to relate to somebody in that way certainly builds trust. With students, it is a little bit different because I've always been good at math. And students, you know, students will sometimes, they will actually often will have this misconception in their head that if I'm not good at math, Mr. Carter's not going to like me. You know, and so to get around that, to build that trust, it's a matter of just building connections. It's relationships. You know, I would say sometimes up to 80% of the job is just having good relationships with the students. You know. There have been times where I have focused almost exclusively on building relationships with students, and I'm like, you know what, the math will come later. Okay, wow. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. To go back to something you mentioned earlier about it's, you know, people may not remember, you know, what you teach them, but how you make them feel. I think that's really true for life in general, right? You know, like you can have fights or like you can do something nice for someone, but eventually, like, it's how you make them feel. That's how they remember, right?
So 100% agree.
So now both math and fitness involve progress over time. How do people stay committed if they're not seeing results right away?
That's a lot where the trust comes in.
Okay.
You know, you know, it's a matter of like trusting the process. Do you trust me? Do you trust me as a teacher or a fitness coach? And if you do, then then you're going to trust the trust the system, right? Like, and I also remind students and clients that progress isn't always linear, you know, and just because you're not seeing results in one area. I will sometimes point out that, okay, so maybe you're not seeing a result in this area, but look at these other areas that you're that you have made progress in that you may not have even known because you were so focused on this one outcome. You know, so for example, you know, maybe somebody comes into the gym and they're focused on. You know, maybe they're focused on a goal of like doing chin-ups. Right? And they're like, you know, I can't do a chin-up. But then you point out that, okay, so maybe you can't do a chin-up, but look at all these other exercises that you have made these gains in. So you know, it's not always going to be the target that's in front of you. Like, you'll get there, right? But there's other ways to measure metrics, right? Or there's other metrics that we can use to measure, right? Or you can say, okay, maybe you haven't done a chin up, but like, if you notice how different your clothes fit, you're like, actually, my body shape has changed, you know, and you're like, okay, so it'll come, right?
Or like you can do like a TRX like pull before, but like now you can do like 20, you know,
exactly.
And then the next step would be to do a chin up, like eventually, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been there for sure. So yeah, I get that. Actually, to follow up on that, if I can ask, right? So, you know, part of being like progress as a student is doing the homework, and part of progress, you know, in a fitness transformation is eating right. You know, like, so they're both like, there's factors outside of the classroom or the gym itself. So what is something, you know, like, how do you try to encourage students or fitness clients to, you know, make sure to try to encourage them to stick to the homework side of it?
A lot of it is, checking in, right? I mean, if you say, okay, you know, do your homework, and then you never mention it again. right? The student's like, well, maybe he doesn't care if I do my homework or not.
Right.
But if you check in, or you have the student, you check in, see their homework, and do it in a low stakes environment. Like I would never assess homework.
Okay.
Because then that's, as soon as in my opinion, as soon as you assess it, that's really just going to be an incentive for a student to, okay, well, I'm just going to copy it, right?
Okay, sure.
So for me, it needs to be like a low stakes thing, but I would say, okay, here is your practice time, and then I would just follow up with that. So the student knows that I'm actually invested as well and that I do care, right? And the same thing with, if a client's working on eating habits, you check in with them. How's it going? Okay, today didn't go so well. Okay, well then tomorrow will be better, right? Don't get, and remind them that just because they had like an off day, that doesn't undo. If you have 5 good days of eating and then one day not good eating, that doesn't undo the 5 good days that you had, right? And to kind of point that stuff out.
It's like that video that's going viral these days, like a trend where it's like someone's like carrying a hamper full of clean clothes and a sock drops, like, oh, well, forget it, and they dump everything else.
Exactly.
Don't just give up, right? Yeah. Exactly. Okay, cool. So moving on, in education and fitness, feedback is key. So I think we kind of talked about this already. So do you approach giving constructive criticism differently between each environment?
A little bit. I think giving feedback is a lot easier in the gym, because people are like during our 45-minute or hour session, people are like actively engaged in the exercise. So you can come around and do these quick, like, keep your chest up, hips down, that sort of thing. You can give them really quick, quick hits here and there for like looking at form and everything.
Right.
With when it comes to school, I mean, you still can. I find you have to be a little bit gentler. I have to be a little bit gentler, okay. Because sometimes when sometimes students will they'll tie in maybe like a sense of self-worth into like what I'm trying to say is, if I'm saying, okay, look, if I'm giving them feedback on what they're doing in math, don't take it as I'm making a comment on who you are as an individual.
Right.
So I have to be a little bit gentler, and I'm like, I'm not talking about you as a person. I'm just saying, like, this one question, maybe redo it, kind of point out some different ways to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I know what you mean. I mean, we were all teenagers once, and I particularly was like, oh no, like I'm doing everything wrong. Like, what am I as a person? So I could totally understand that angle.
One thing that is common for both is to make sure that you're giving positive feedback as well. When they're doing well, like, let them know. Because I think for me, sometimes I forget, and I'm like, okay, all I'm doing is pointing out things that you need to adjust. And even though in my head I'm like, I'm doing it, I'm approaching it from a good place, people also need to hear that they're doing things that are good and that are right, and
of course. I mean, it's natural. Absolutely. Now, both students and adults face burnout time to time. So what strategies have you found work well to keep people motivated? Actually, funny, I was having a conversation with a client just this morning about this. She was telling me that her sons do some martial arts, and she said they're getting, and they're young, and she said they're getting burnt out because they do it all the time, right? And now it's becoming, she said it's almost becoming like work. It's becoming a chore. So my advice to her was, it's okay to step back. And because I actually do that all the time.
you know, you don't want to get to the point where you get so burnt out that you're like, I'm quitting the gym or I'm giving up on this class. Like, you know, you never want to get to that point, right?
For sure.
But when you're feeling like it's becoming too much, you step back, right? So for me, you know, I love F45. I'm always going to be an F45 guy. There are times when I'm like, okay, I want to step back and I want to run. So instead of going to F45, you know, 5-6 times a week, I'll go once or twice a week.
Okay.
And I'll run more, or I'll hike, or, you know, I think it's good. Just mix it up, you know. And, you know, because like variety is important.
Right. We're not robots. We can't just do the same thing over and over.
I think I think it's very unrealistic to expect that, you know, you're going to be so committed to one thing to the exclusion of everything else that you're always going to have that same passion, right? People get tired, people get burnt out. And I think the same is true for academics, you know. You know, now, I mean, in terms of like somebody taking math or social studies, you can't just step back.
Right, yeah.
Right? But then balance, right? The way that you approach, each of your courses. You know, I usually coach my students that, you know, think of it as there's a certain amount of hours you need to spend. Don't spend, like, it's far better to spend, you know, 30 minutes a night for 4 nights than to spend 2 hours one night.
Sure.
Break it up. Break it up so that you're not feeling, you know, there's definitely diminishing returns when you start, you know, past that sort of 30-minute, 1 hour mark. So,
I mean, that's why they encourage like brain breaks, but like I do like the idea of just like little blocks, like, you know, every day. Yeah. Great. Okay. So now you've worked in Abu Dhabi for a while now. How long has it been?
Yeah, we're coming up on 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. How has the international environment shaped how you teach and coach?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a lot different than Canada. You know, I mean, in terms of coaching, I've become a lot more, I would say, laid back in terms of, you know, there's things that are, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they're little things, but just things like, you know, I'm used to, in Canada, people will sign up a week ahead of time for classes.
Oh, okay.
You know, and out here, people usually you'll have like there's only 2 people sign up, and then all of a sudden 10 people drop in.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It tends to be more spontaneous.
It is, and so you know, just kind of a little bit more going with the flow, right? So it's made me more of a, you know, it's just made me more of a, okay, just relax, just be accepting. You know, and in the class it is. There's an element of that as well. So like one of the things that I had to learn. So in the culture out here, when a student comes into class, it's customary. They if they come in and, you know, say they're coming in late, they have to greet every other student and also the teacher before they sit down.
Right? Sorry, is this like your own personal rule?
No, this is just that's just kind of custom out here.
Oh, okay.
Like when students come into a room, they have to greet everybody, right? And then they sit down. Apparently, it's very rude to not.
Okay.
You know, it's rude to just like come in and sit down without saying hello to everybody, right? So it took me a while to go, okay, this student's not being rude. Like, because in Canada, if a student comes in late, generally the understanding would be, if you come in late, you're quiet, you take your seat.
Right.
You don't come in and, you know, walk around to every student, shake their hand. Right. You know, it's not a sign of disrespect. You know, so it just.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, coming out here to just a completely different culture, you know, it's just made me. I think it's just made me I don't want to say tolerant because that's not the right word, but it's just made me a bit more. It's opened my eyes.
A little bit more open-minded.
Yeah, I'm a lot more open-minded,
culturally enriched, kind of.
Yeah,
right?
things that like we would consider rude aren't actually. It's just, it's just like the way it is.
Different
right?
way of doing things. Yeah, exactly.
So it's made me appreciate a lot more.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now this might be a long one, but do you remember a standout success story? So one from teaching and one from coaching that really stuck with you.
Yeah, with coaching, I don't have a specific standout story. I mean, with coaching, it's a lot more of like little ones where, somebody will come into the gym and they'll lift a weight that they've never lifted before, and they'll say, thanks. I've never benched using the 15 kg, or I've never done a chin up, and that was my first time, right?
Great feeling.
And those are great, right? And when the client knows that that you believe in them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even this morning, one girl was. We were doing push-ups off of the little boxes.
Okay.
And I was like, just do a clap, like push up and do a clap. And she's like, are you kidding? I'm like, no, you can do it. I've seen you. And so, it was something that she would probably never have done. And I was like, oh, just do it. You can do it. And she did it, and she was sort of surprised herself. Nice. And so there's a lot of little things like that where you're seeing that people like pushing themselves, doing things that maybe they didn't think that they could do.
Right.
I have one really nice story. I had a student last year. It was a grade 10 boy. And at the beginning of the year, I didn't know how the year was going to go.
Okay.
The student was really math was not his thing, right? He was really not engaged. He didn't, you could tell he didn't want to be there. He was maybe a little surly.
Okay.
Not rude, but just, and wouldn't really do much in class, wouldn't take notes, wouldn't participate, sometimes would sleep. And so I mentioned earlier, like sometimes you just forget about math and you just focus on relationships.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So that's what I did. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to butt heads with this student, right? I'll just get to know him. So I started talking to him, and I got to know him, and I found out, that he does MMA.
Okay.
And he trains all afternoon and into the evening. Wow. So he's sleeping because he's tired.
Right.
He's not lazy. He's training 4, 5, 6 hours a day, right? Doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu and doing weight training and doing like all of these things, right? Like he's, so a lot of my, maybe sort of preconceived notions of like, this kid's sleeping because he's lazy or he's not engaged.
Right.
Well, they were wrong, and I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't got to know him. So I just got to know him, and then as a fitness coach, I started talking to him about fitness.
Okay, yeah.
And then we connected. We connected on that level, and slowly I kind of won him over. I found out from other students that he spoke very highly of me.
Oh wow,
he
nice.
Didn't really speak highly of most teachers.
Okay.
And at the end of the year, I mean, now I still had to get him to do some math.
Of course.
So I had him come in a few times, like near the end of the year, because he wasn't doing well, but I was able to get him to come in at lunches, and I worked with him, and until we sort of got to a point where I was like, okay, I can pass you, right? At the end of the year, he came in, and he came in to say thank you.
Nice.
And he told me that that a lot of teachers basically had given up on him.
Okay.
A lot of teachers had like treated him a certain way.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And so and so he kind of just took that on, was like, okay, I'm not good at math, I'm dumb. That was sort of what his, I mean, not that the teachers would call him dumb, but
right. But he internalized the
but he
feeling
internalized
based
it,
on
and
attitudes.
but what he told me was, he said, but you didn't let me be dumb. Like you forced me to do the work, and now I've passed.
That's awesome.
And he's like,
That's really good.
Yeah, so I mean, in a way, I think I kind of helped him change the way that he saw himself, right? Yeah, I mean, so that was just something where it was like, you just start with like, okay, I'm not going to butt heads and try to force him to learn math. I'll just get to know him.
That's an awesome story. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
And you should be honestly really proud of yourself, because that's great.
It was, I mean, I was really, it just made me really happy, right? And, and before I started coaching, I wasn't really able to connect with students on that level either, So, so that adding that element into my life has allowed me to, connect with students it gives me another way to connect with them, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So
it's great. So basically becoming a coach has made you become a better teacher.
It has really helped, yeah.
That's wicked.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. Okay, so last question for today.
Okay.
What's one lesson you've learned in the gym that made you a better classroom teacher?
Okay. So I know this leads a lot into reflects back to the story I just told you, but one of the real lessons that I've learned from the gym is that like there's no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts. I know sometimes in the classroom, students will try to go, AI is going to help me, or if only I have a better study guide, or if only I have a better tutor, etc. There's, at the end of the day, it just comes down to like, are you going to put the time in? There's no shortcuts to better health, right? I mean, some people will some people will try to, is there a special workout? Is there a special diet? Is there a special pill?
Right. Tell me which exact ab crunch will get me the six pack,
Exactly.
But,
and at the end of the day, it's just like, are you willing to put the time in?
Right.
And, and that's one of the things that I do try to stress in the classroom, that, there's no shortcuts. You either do the work and you see the results, or you don't and don't. Yeah.
And how do you feel consistency fits in with that?
Yeah, I mean, consistency is huge, right? I've taken a lot of what I've learned about like programming from the gym, and the idea that progress isn't always linear. That it's okay to not know how to do something. There seems to be this disconnect between like, if I go to the gym and I can't lift a certain weight, that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means I can't lift that weight yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I work hard, and I do the right things, eventually I likely will be able to lift that weight.
Right.
However, in education, if you come in and you're like, I don't know something, there is this, there's this like, okay, that means I'm dumb, or I'm a bad, or whatever. There's this shame in not knowing how to do something. And I try to bring that analogy into the classroom, that like, well, no, you're not supposed to know how to do this, right? And you are supposed to struggle, and it's okay, and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay, to not know how to do everything right away, but to get to where you want to go, there's no magic formula, there's no pill, it's just a matter of like, are you going to put the time in?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Sean, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today. Honestly, a lot of what we've talked about has been really insightful, I think, into the world of education, but from two different, but also in some ways similar approaches. So so thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you around.
All right, thank you.
All right.
I've Appreciated being here.
Awesome. Thanks.